Sure. I mean, there's certainly the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that's a discussion of game length, and and the theoretical and subjective. What is value? Like, what do we you know, I don't know what you thought about the order or what everybody else is going to think about the order, but like everyone has an opinion of like, how long this game is. I mean, for the record, let's see. I think my initial review run was like around 6, 7 hours. I tend to be very like I love exploring in games and stuff like that, so I will run down all the nooks and crannies and find as many collectibles as I can get. And I think we streamed the whole thing. Let's see, it would have been last Friday, and that came in at like 6.5. So I mean, roughly the game is around. I think you can comfortably say like 7 hours for like an average playthrough. Give or take a little bit if you're like rushing through it versus, maybe playing on a harder difficulty or something like that.
I want to say my playthrough was about 7 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
I might be a little off on that, but
I think
it
like
seems like a good length.
I think the hours number is less important. Like I when I was reviewing it, I tried to get away from that a little bit because like I think people focus on like the actual hour count less so than like how you actually engage with this. And I think like the better way to describe it is like you're gonna sit down like on a Saturday and either like play through this whole game in like one long session, or you're gonna beat it like over a weekend. You'll pick it up 2 or 3 times and you'll be done. And like that's going to be most people's experience with this game is like, they start playing on Friday night and then by Sunday they're done with it.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Mhm.
But yeah, it can vary a lot depending like on actual skill level in this type of game, difficulty you're playing it on, how much you like to explore, or if you sat down and read every one of those newspaper articles.
It's just like every newspaper, like I'm gonna try and read this and see what it says. And
A lot of those are really interesting, I thought, but we'll get to that in a bit, I guess.
yeah, I mean there was even the audio logs and stuff like that, and which was unfortunate that they had just a god awful system for how you actually had to try to engage with those things.
I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, it wasn't the most user-friendly or anything, but
I mean, all right. When did
I've seen
BioShock
worse.
come out? However long ago. Like we had this system solved. Like you pick up an audio log, you hit a button, and it plays it for you, and like you continue on playing the game. And for those who don't know, the order you have to hit the start menu, go into the menu, and then hit play on these audio logs. And just listen to them. You can't leave the menu. You can't do anything else. Like you're just listening to these things. Like it's actually just faster to read it because they have the little written out script of it as well. Yeah, I just didn't understand like why. And there was, like you said, there was some interesting stuff. Like I remember picking up one that was like on the docks, and the guy was, they were talking about the crates, and they had to dispose of the crates and stuff like that. And it gives you some early hints as to some of the story and things like that. But it was just like I don't really want to keep coming back to the start menu every time.
I don't know. Generally, with me, when something like that comes up, I will like stop and focus on whatever they're saying rather than continue playing. So I guess I really didn't catch how annoying that could be for most people.
So I don't know. I guess getting away from game length. I guess the big kind of like bugbear when it came to the order was like I felt like the game that they sold us and the game they delivered were not the same thing. When I saw the original trailers, I was all hyped up for steampunk monster hunters with really cool gadgets, fighting in London, and getting rid of these mythological like creatures, so like werewolves and ghosts and vampires and stuff like that. And 90% of the order is just you fighting normal humans with normal guns, and that was the big thing. That was kind of the big thing that I took away from it.
I too kind of was expecting more of the fights against the werewolves and whatnot.
Yeah,
so I was a bit disappointed in that regard too, that it was mostly just you versus people.
Yeah, maybe minor spoilers, but I think you can actually count on one hand the number of times you fight non-humans in this game. But I mean, the other thing too was just like I wanted more like I wanted more guns like the thermite gun. Like I thought that thing was really cool. It was like this awesome idea of like, hey, let's make this kind of like weird flamethrower-esque rocket launcher kind of weapon.
Yeah,
And then
like
you had like the arc gun, and like I just wanted all of the guns to be like that.
just coating everything with this flammable crap and then igniting
Mhm.
it. It does seem like there's a lot more they could do with this that they just never got around to.
Yeah, I raised it in my review of like I really wonder what happened with this game, and I'd be really interested to see like a post-mortem on it. If the Order was always supposed to be kind of this Rise of Rome release title-esque thing where it's like, all right, this is really just kind of like a glorified tech demo, but you kind of forgive it because everybody's still learning the brand new console architecture
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Um, and so this was really something that should have released, either with the PS4 or shortly afterwards, and for whatever reason just got delayed. Or if this was something where like the developers really had this kind of like grand vision for the game, and they just weren't able to deliver on it. Either they had pressures from somewhere, or they just couldn't keep up with what they wanted. There are a lot of really cool details that I noticed with this game, and I felt like there was a lot of missed opportunity,
Yeah.
which makes me think that it was more the latter than the former. That like they really wanted to make something cool and just weren't able to deliver on it.
Yeah, so I think a lot of what they were doing with the Order was trying out ideas they would want to implement long term, see how they work, rather than focus too much on making them core mechanics, like all the different strange guns.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they wanted to basically try out the thermite, make sure it was firstly functional, and then kind of gauge how much fun people were actually having with all the different things you could do with the gun. But didn't really want to saddle you with it. No, I did love finding that little note with like the picture of both Tesla and Edison, and he just like drew the horns on Edison.
Yeah, like that was the stuff that always kept like getting to me. Was like I feel like there's so many of these like really awesome details, and like somebody clearly spent a whole bunch of time like coming up with this like really great backstory and stuff like that for like what the Order is and like all of these little elements, and they just like didn't use any of the interesting stuff. Like we'll just tell this other story that for whatever reason.
I can see that. Like a lot of it though, I don't know how they really would have worked it in. But I'm expecting if they do another one of these, frickin' Edison's going to be aligned with the villains. That's going to happen, and it will be great.
Well, that was one of the things I was like, maybe not disappointed, but it was like there was a lot of stuff they didn't really explain either. Because like, all right, so none of this is spoilers, but like, turns out Nikola Tesla is helping the rebels. They never explain like why he's doing it or how that connection ever came to be. They're just like, oh, yep, okay, I guess that explains why they have these weapons that they weren't supposed to have.
Yeah, I was kind of suspecting that the moment we found that.
Yeah, when
Like,
you
the
like
moment
find
you
the
see the
cache of
weapon.
weapons, you're like,
It's
where are these coming from?
probably him.
Hmm.
Or I thought it could have been the guy running the council because he was someone says it. Nope, we're not staying here. But werewolves siding with everyone. Nope, not staying here.
Not important. We're not going back into Whitechapel.
I do feel like, other than a couple times, you're like, you just wanted to show off. Everything they did so much to just add to the atmosphere. I thought the level design was fantastic. Like, I never felt like, oh, that's there solely for me to climb up it.
I will have to disagree with you on that. There was a couple times where I found the level design just frustrating in certain ways. Like there was one point where you're down in like a subway station, and so like you go off on like a tangent, and you get to the end, and they're like, "Oh, this is a dead end. Guess we have to go back." And so you walk backwards, and then it's like, "Oh, some rebels opened up a door that you couldn't get in through before, and now you can proceed with the level." And it was just like, "All right, guys, you really just like walk me down here for 45 seconds to just like waste my time and get like one line of dialogue that doesn't change anything just to walk me back up?" Like, that was the stuff I did not really appreciate.
That
There's-
was kind of silly, but I don't think that's really a bad level design. As just, what are you doing?
yeah, I mean, I think there's other
It is
things where
frustrating.
like, let's see. So like one of the big kind of like set pieces for this game is the on the airship, the Agamemnon. And so like you start off with like this really cool scene of you like being dropped off by another airship on top of it. You kind of like rappel down the side, and it's like, oh, it's like this. You get this really awesome like big vista of London, and then you just kind of end up in this really tightly paced like or tightly narrow like corridor shooter, and I'm just like, oh well, kind of wanted like a really cool like being inside this kind of giant blimp and like having to like shoot at guys who are maybe like up in the rafters on the sides or something like that. And I don't know. There were certain aspects of the game's level design that I was just not a huge fan of.
There are definitely times it feels like there's missed opportunities here and there that you're
Hmm.
like, I wanted a bit more out of this, guys.
Yeah, or like the strange like platforming that was like weirdly unnecessary. It was like, all right, do we really need to like have a minute where like me and one of the other NPCs push something over so then we can climb on top of something and then go jump on something else and like there wasn't any like there wasn't any skill to it. You were just hitting a button as like you got like it just played the animation as you jump from one thing to another. I don't know. I was there were certain elements of the game's level design which I could appreciate. Just the certain verticality that they had to some of the environments and areas where you were constantly kind of like going up on top of things and moving from here to there. But there are other elements where just like, all right, we're gonna jump in this barn. And we're gonna raise this little winch to move this stuff out of the way so I can shimmy down the side. Like,
Like, part of me agrees that it does kind of feel like you're just wasting your time, but I think I have the idea of why they kind of did it like that. Because you get other games where you just go, oh, everything is just conveniently already there to let me proceed. But yeah, if you do it like the way they did it here, it does kind of feel a bit more natural with how the setup is. It doesn't feel like they're just quite as firmly grabbing your hand and dragging you where to go. I mean, they are. Make no mistake, this is a very linear game. But the
yeah,
way you
it
go
just
about
it,
it
it
feels a
was
bit more like how you would expect it to go. Like, yeah, I'm going to have to push a cart there to get up that thing.
like I just remember having this feeling of like, really, like that's it, like this game is over. Like there were so many other things that like you know like Lafayette and Igraine are still like super pissed at you, although Lafayette's like sort of wavering, and like obviously the rest of the order is all really mad, and like Nicola's now working full on for the rebels, but the rebels have left, and like but we have this whole United India Company thing and the half breeds, and it's just like all of this stuff is just like still on the table. Like I really wanted them to like take a little bit of it off the table. Like you can tease into the next game without like leaving me feeling like, oh wow, I just really didn't do anything. It's a little I don't know what's the best way to put this. Is like not ballsy, but like it almost sells your viewers short because like Ready at Dawn doesn't know if there's really like I mean they probably have a good idea that there's going to be an Order sequel, like that's probably what Sony had already had in the works, but like if there never is an Order sequel, like everybody who really enjoyed your experience like has this terrible endpoint for it. So like I don't know, I feel like you're a little bit more beholden to your fans to be like, all right, here's a really cool like confined experience, and so like even if we did hint some stuff that like never gets resolved, like at least you feel like you got some kind of an ending.
Again, I feel like the arc they'd set up was finished at that point. Like, your goal was never hunt down the head of the Lycan guys. Your goal was to find out what was going on, expose it, and once all of that happens, you essentially gained your new cause in presumably fighting against this East India group.